Welcome back to the Explainer. Okay, so we're diving right in today because we've got to shatter what I like to call the illusion of done. You know the feeling, right? You've just finished building out your AI workflow. It's up, it's running, the outputs are looking pretty great, and you are so ready to just snap the laptop shut and call Module 1 a wrap. But, well, here's the honest truth. Stopping right now, that's a massive mistake. It's supernatural to assume a reflection document is just, a polite wrap-up, a little bit of busy work they tack on at the end after the real work is done. But that is completely backwards. This reflection isn't some polite bow on top of your project. It's actually the exact crucial step where your durable learning really happens. Think about it for a second. Why do we always forget our own brilliant ideas? While you were building this capstone workflow, you were totally in the zone. You were running on pure instinct, pattern matching against all the stuff you've learned, and making literally dozens of micro decisions on the fly. But let me ask you this. Flash forward 3 months. Are you really going to remember exactly why you routed one specific step to Llama 70B instead of Claude Haiku? Are you going to recall why that final polish step absolutely had to have Opus instead of Sonnet? Or what weird random edge case forced you to add that error handling node? Honestly, no way. You won't remember any of it. And the problem is, without a documented manual, you are essentially setting a massive trap for future you. If you don't write this down, you'll be forced into this painful, honestly super frustrating process of reverse engineering your own logic right out of the workflow artifact itself. You'll be digging through old nodes and API calls, doing what's perfectly described as the confused archaeology of your own past decisions. It's just a wildly expensive way to maintain anything. So the document we're building today, it's literally the user manual for your own past decisions. This really gets to the core philosophy of this whole exercise. Listen to this quote for a second. Describing your decisions in writing is what turns them from things you did into things you understand. It's so true, isn't it? Building has to run on instinct. You can't just pause and draft a novel after every single node you connect. But writing is the mechanical process that takes those fleeting intuitions and locks them into permanent usable knowledge. The cost of just writing them down once right now is absolutely tiny compared to the massive headache of reverse engineering them later. Now, what's really interesting here is how the payoff of this document actually maps out across 3 very distinct time horizons. So right now, physically writing it closes out Module 1 and locks those patterns in your brain. Fast forward 3 months, when you're in maintenance mode, it'll be the very first thing you read to remember what you actually built so you don't accidentally break it. But the real magic, that happens in 6 months, because we all know the models are going to update. Haiku 4.5 is going to become Haiku 5, right? Because you have this document, you'll know exactly which decisions were tied to a specific model and which were just about a general model tier. It makes evolving your workflow completely seamless. So what does this deliverable actually look like? Well, it's strictly one page, single-spaced, capping out at exactly 600 to 800 words. And that constraint? Absolutely deliberate. Here's why. If you write less than 600 words, you're naturally going to drift into being pretty vague. But if you write more than 800 words, you start falling into this trap of defensive over-explanation. So 600 to 800 well-chosen words is literally the sweet spot. It captures genuine decisions and honest reflection without wasting a single second of your time. And to keep you safely inside that word limit, the document is broken down into 6 really mechanical sections. You really want to treat this like a strict blueprint, not some open-ended college essay. You've got what you built, just a plain language summary, the architecture, your decisions and rationale, the cost data, what broke, and finally, what you do differently. Let's actually dive right into the most critical of these steps so you can see how they build a totally complete picture of your workflow. We'll start with section 2, your architecture. Now, you can use a diagram or just a short list for this, but it has to be crystal clear. For every single step, you need to label what it does, name the specific model you used, and note the exact access mode you used to get there. Like, was it a first-party API, an inference provider? Oh, and if there's a manual stage in there, like pulling in Notebook LM for a human review, you've got to mark that explicitly. Your architecture section has to be so vivid that someone could reconstruct your whole workflow from scratch without ever actually opening the platform you built it on. Next up is section 3, and honestly, this is the absolute heart of the reflection, your decisions and rationale. Now, you don't need to defend every tiny choice, just the 3 or 4 really big ones. But your defense, it's got to be strong. Saying because I had an API key already is, well, it's weak. That is not going to survive a challenge from a senior engineer. But if you say something like, because the bulk steps were short prompts or Haiku's quality matched Sonnet, making the cost difference meaningful at volume, boom, that is a rationale that survives a real scrutiny. That's exactly the bar we're aiming for here. Moving on to section 4, cost data. You've got to bring the actual math here. We want to see the per-run cost of the hybrid version you built compared against an all-frontier baseline. Basically, imagine if you just threw Opus or GPT 4.5 at every single step, what would that cost? Show us the projected monthly numbers. And here's a little secret. Whether that cheap workhorse pattern saved you a massive 80% or just a modest 12%, it really doesn't matter. If your workflow is mostly dominated by a heavy polish step, you're naturally going to see smaller savings. The true value here is just the honest reporting of what you actually built. Which brings us to Section 5, What Broke? And let me just say this loud and clear. Rough edges are a badge of honor. Seriously, real workflows have broken edges. You need to document 3 to 5 things that completely failed. Maybe step 2 blew up because a stray emoji crashed your JSON parser, like 3 times out of 20 test runs. Documenting exactly what broke, why it broke, and how you eventually worked around it, that proves to the reader, and honestly to yourself, that you actually tested this thing deeply, instead of just running the happy path one time and calling it a day. The honesty traps. Let's talk about 3 common failures you definitely want to avoid when writing this reflection. As you're writing, there are these psychological hurdles you've got to watch out for. Trap number 1 is vague self-praise. If you find yourself writing, "I learned a lot about AI," or "the cheap workhorse pattern was super useful," stop. You just failed the specificity check. Those sentences could have literally been written by someone who never even opened the workflow tool. They completely lack what we call fingerprints. You want specific fingerprints. Try something like, "I learned that Haiku 4.5 misclassifies sarcasm about 5% of the time on these specific emails." You see the difference? That second sentence absolutely proves you got your hands dirty. Okay, trap number 2 is defensive justification. It is so tempting to use this document to fiercely protect all your choices. You start writing, "Well, I had to use Opus because..." Nope, scratch that. The fix here is to separate your factual description of what happened from your decision about whether you'd actually do it again. So first the description. The cost was 3x higher because the output ran long. Then the decision. With hindsight, I'd definitely add a max tokens cap. It totally drops the defensiveness and replaces it with some really beautiful honesty. And trap number 3 is survivorship bias. This is when you basically write a glowing hagiography of your workflow, focusing only on the stuff that worked perfectly. But building? Building involves a huge list of attempts that totally failed. Unparsable outputs, timed out API integrations, totally exposed assumptions. If you skip over the 2 hours you spent literally banging your head against the wall debugging JSON mode, you're reporting selectively. And worse, you are robbing future you of incredibly valuable lessons. Give us the whole picture, the good, the bad, and the broken. So the crucial point is making sure this document actually does what it's supposed to do. Before you even think about calling it done, run through this quick 6-point checklist. Did your sentences pass the specificity check? Check. Did you report the actual cost numbers compared to a baseline? Check. Did you name at least 3 broken things? Are your decisions genuinely defendable to a peer? Did you identify an actionable do differently? And finally, are you strictly sitting between that 600 and 800 word limit? If you hit all 6 of those, then yes, your reflection and Module 1 is genuinely officially complete. The bridge to tomorrow. How setting up Module 2 actually starts right now. Let me let you in on a little secret about that final section of your document, the what you do differently part. It isn't just looking backwards. By identifying the gaps in your current toolkit, you're actively building a bridge, because all those gaps you just discovered while building, that is exactly where the curriculum is headed next. Module 2 goes way deeper. Did you find yourself really wishing you had more privacy? Or maybe cheaper scale? Well, Module 2 covers open-weight models. Did you wish your workflow could just query a massive corpus of your own internal documents? You're going to be building your own grounded retrieval and RAG systems with custom vector stores. Or maybe you wished your system could actually think through a problem logically before blurting out an answer? You're going to learn multi-step reasoning chains to build real functioning agents. The curriculum is perfectly designed to close the exact gaps you just found. So I want to leave you with this one thought as you sit down to write your time traveler's manual. Don't just reflect on what you successfully built. Think about the friction. Think about the rough edges. What did your workflow want to do that it just simply couldn't reach with the tools you have right now? Write that down, because once you name it, you are ready to build it. Take the hour, write the document, and we'll see you in Module 2.